Hello folks, it's me, William from William Hayward Painter, and welcome once again to an Artist's Perspective review. This is the second video I've done in this vein. The last I did of these was for the trailer for Nope, Jordan Peele's newest horror movie. I'll put the link to that video on screen right here. But today's video goes in a slightly, sometimes very, different direction, as today I'm talking about a Marvel movie. Thor Love and Thunder, directed again by Taika Waititi, who directed Thor Ragnarok, my favourite Thor movie, like many, though this one may top it. I don't know, I hope so. Thor Love and Thunder is set to be released in early July 2022, the fourth in the Thor movie series, which is a first for this franchise, as so far this crossover movie series has only ever had trilogies. With its solo character films anyway, the Avenger series of course has 4 movies, so Thor is the first to get a 4th solo film, and his newest outing is the 29th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or the MCU. You definitely don't need me to tell you what the MCU is. I touched on it there, but even if I hadn't done that, if you've been monitoring the blockbuster film landscape, even from afar, you know that superhero movies are all the rage, and have been for a very long time, delighting people like me, but causing disdain to people like Martin Scorsese, but, you know. So the funny thing about today's review is that last time I said I didn't think I would be reviewing another movie trailer or teaser, so naturally that's exactly what I'm doing today. I want to talk about movies and give my perspective. I have a couple of ideas in mind for future videos, but I can see myself talking about trailers for upcoming movies again, if I feel inspired, so I'm just going to play it by ear now, see what happens. At the time of my writing my review script, as virtually none of these reviews or videos in general are ad-libbed, the teaser trailer, as well as the full trailer for Thor Love and Thunder has been released, plus many more at this point. And as one expands so well on the other, I've decided to talk about all of them here, or at least most of them, as the ad campaign for this movie at this point is giving a lot of plot away, so I'll steer clear of that, but I'll cover a percentage of it here, rather than doing all separate videos at this stage. But anyway, even though the formula I've come up with for my artist perspective reviews will be used again, I'll be talking about the plot of the film, which, even if you've not read the premise online for this movie, or seen publicity for it since its pre-production phase, none of which is necessary for the enjoyment of the film, by the way, as honestly it helps keep you away from spoilers. So even if that is the case, the trailer elaborates on the plot pretty clearly and very effectively, to best sell the drama of Thor's character journey, and the comedy and spectacle of this movie to general audiences, even though I'm sure there'll be plenty of twists and turns along the way to surprise people. As I review the Thor 4 teaser, I'll talk about Thor's character storyline, plus artistic influences, references and ideas from other movies too, plus anything else I feel is relevant in my analysis. Doing what I love and what I do best, bridging the gap between two of my great loves, fine art and popular entertainment. Before we dive in, it's important to note that Marvel Studios is owned by the Walt Disney Company, which again isn't news to a lot of people. They've distributed the MCU films and had their influence on that franchise, however slight, since Thor The Dark World in 2013, which makes sense when little references like these appear in the Marvel movies.
When you said you would take me to California for the first time, I thought you meant Coachella or Disneyland.
I had strings, but now I'm free. There are no strings on me.
I mention this not in a cynical way, as Disney does own a lot of intellectual property, maybe a little bit too much, but more to give context to my review of the Thor trailer, as I can sense their influence, their thumbprints on this movie. From references, in my eyes, to their classic catalogue of animated movies, to more current films like the Star Wars franchise, and some of the more recent Marvel movies too, in terms of visual style and the stories being told. So without further ado, let's give my perspective on the Thor Love and Thunder teaser trailer. The trailer opens with our titular character Thor Odinson running through the woods, literally, but in a way metaphorically also, as when he runs we see him in 3 different phases of his life, from childhood to his teenage years to the present day. Great transitions as he passes by and through the trees, my favourite shot. It's very Taika Waititi, lots of quick cutting, and the comedy framing as he runs in place too. The centre framing is very Wes Anderson, which Taika is a big fan of. There's an abundance of references to Anderson's vision visual style in his movies, from the way he writes characters, the direction, the comedy, drama, hybrid style. Also the 2D and or 3D stop-motion animation style that Anderson uses too, kind of like the Monty Python animated cutouts. Taika Waititi is an interesting filmmaker, in that some of his earlier films are often more slow-paced and relaxed than others. I'd say a film like Eagle vs. Shark is very slow-paced, until the third act at least, similar to What We Do in the Shadows and his short film Two Cars, One Night, very chilled and character-driven, whilst his newer blockbuster movies feel more energized, while still being Taika Waititi films as they have his integrity and vision. That is to say, his delightful irreverence. This shot kind of reminds me of Eagle vs. Shark.
I wrote that in a week.
Of the stop-motion puppet of the apple core with the cartoon arms and legs, like a stick figure that walks away slowly, very forlorn. The motion of Thor running versus this puppet is a good side-by-side comparison of Taika's movies. How you can tell it's still him. These bits are both kooky, funny, dramatic. But Thor Love and Thunder is an example of him adapting his filmmaking to be more adventurous, fun and silly, while still being full of heart and with that touch of Taika Waititi-style dramedy. Also, these two shots both have a woodland setting, or at least a backdrop with trees. The woodland setting of this shot is very old-school, classic Disney animated movie. Reminds me of Robin Hood a teeny bit. But the main style influence this reminds me of is Sleeping Beauty. The forest backgrounds and fantasy backgrounds in that movie are amazing. Drawn and coloured by Eyvind Earle, who has a very distinct and stylized look to his work. The often geometric shapes, epic scale and chiaroscuro used in Earle's designs makes them distinct and wonderful. And, during his career, he worked on other iconic animated films such as Lady and the Tramp, Peter Pan and Alice in Wonderland. He's one that has influenced the look of more modern animated films, like Pocahontas and the smash hit Frozen, which are both Disney films. Also Open Season, the Sony Pictures release. Even to live-action films like The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug, at least during the pre-production phase while Guillermo del Toro was attached to the series, as his vision for the woodlands of Mirkwood was influenced by the stylized approach of Eyvind Earle. Earle's colour palette is often very pure in terms of the bright hues of colour, makes his work look kind of trippy.
Wow, it's really trippy. It sort of felt like being in a Tim Burton movie, stepping on that, in terms of the brightness of the colours.
But going back to the Thor 4 trailer, I'm imagining these trees done in live action as well as hand-drawn animation style, with Earle as art animation director. It's very Disney. As Thor runs and he grows into the man we've come to know him as, his clothing evolves too. From his clothes as a young child and as a teenager, reminds me of his costumes in Thor's first movie from 2011. How simplified it was, contrast to his cape, 6 discs on his armour as fastenings, and his helmet with the eagle wings, the latter of which is very comic accurate. Round of applause there. Yeah, the red cape, silver helmet, exposed arms, blue leg wear, bits of gold in the colour scheme too, with the discs and the boots. It's very mighty Thor from the 60s Silver Age of Marvel Comics. Iconic.
What a classic Thor adventure.
I'm not sure who plays teenage Thor here. Could be Chris Hemsworth, who plays Thor in the MCU. Either it's him, but digitally shrunk to make him look younger and less muscular. Either that or a stunt person or somebody. But I believe child Thor is played by one of Chris Hemsworth's twin sons, either Tristan or Sasha Hemsworth, which is cool. Helps sell that it's Thor by having the talent be related to the actual actor. Speaking of which, adult Thor runs with more effort, gruffness and nobility than his younger selves.
All seemed so easy back then.
And his armour is different. Looks more like it did in Thor 2011, but also the Avengers a little bit. With the armour covering his arms, the colours are a bit darker, more muted and functional, less glammy. But the cape is still the same, still got that rich redness. There's a carryover from Thor as a young meat-headed boy into a grown man. He's matured a lot in recent years, but until recently he always seemed like a man who hadn't grown up past the age of 10, maybe 12 if I'm being generous. Very much like a Star-Lord, Peter Quill type, which, by the way, I'll get back to that connection soon. This trailer is set to music from Guns N' Roses. Welcome to the jungle! No, although that is an amazing song. We hear snippets of GNR's Sweet Child of Mine, almost like a remix, very moving song. It's epic rock music, but also with a lot of heart and depth. Perfect choice, as Taika Waititi's films are comedic, but it would be pretty disingenuous just to refer to his movies as comedies.
A lot of my style is actually not even comedy, it's just sort of kind of weird light art, light drama. in a way.
It's also another example of a popular classic rock song in a Marvel movie. Similar to how Thor Ragnarok used Immigrant Song by Led Zeppelin, which is a 70s tune, and now GNR's Sweet Child of Mine, which is an 80s track, going through the decades of music. Immigrant Song was kind of the theme tune to Thor Ragnarok, certainly a motif as it fits the movie so well, and plays in the most appropriate spots, and was used memorably in the trailer for that movie too.
He's a friend from work.
So I hope Sweet Child of Mine gets the same treatment here. Going back to Taika Waititi, before his acclaim as the director of Hunt for the Wilderpeople, with Sam Neill and Julian Dennison, and then Thor Ragnarok in the MCU, Taika was making these little slice-of-life indie dramas about family, which sometimes felt depressing, but no more so than needed to get the message across. Messages about
The foster care system in New Zealand, child neglect, and raising children and families. All my films are about families.
This is the perfect fit for Thor as he is in the MCU right now. Being parentless and brotherless and almost like a man without a country. He's a god,
Small G.
but still a member of a minority group of people trying to reintegrate with the world, which Taika feels like a good choice for as director. Looking at his film What We Do in the Shadows, great comedy, but according to Taika it is
It's also about immigration, and it's about people who live on the outskirts and live in the margins. So yes, all of my films I think do touch on something that's quite important, but on the surface they kind of seem just like ridiculous films about nothing.
From the early days, Taika definitely got flack for that, but as he's refined his concepts from movie to movie, his work has felt fantastically artistic, creative, and with great humour, though I'll talk more about that in this review as needed. Going back to the song in the trailer, Taika's process as a writer, which he is credited as on this movie, unlike Thor Ragnarok, interestingly enough, although he variously added tonal changes
And the right dialogue and put in jokes or add characters
to make that film his own, as it feels like one of his movies, despite the mega budget and working with a major studio to make it happen. Music is pivotal in his writing of the script, but also finding thematic music to use in the movie to aid it. Sometimes that's just a keyword, or indeed songs about love.
songs about love.
You know, the good kind that don't suck, or suck the subtlety and enjoyment out of your comedy, especially if it's a rom-com. We cut to a shot of Thor against the fire and the flames. We see a similar hero shot in a later teaser, Thor and his whole team, Guardians included, marching in the fire towards camera. But the initial shot reminds me of the flashback sequences in The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, both involving Luke Skywalker, our veteran hero of those movies, in or against an inferno setting. I think that's an apt comparison, as, now I'm not sure what the context is in this shot, but Thor is done with his superheroism in this film.
His hands were once used for battle.
Much like Luke was in those movies, that is until he is called back to active duty and helps win the day. You see? Disney? Parallels. Thor's costume here is a little bit different too. The animal fur as part of his cape, or instead of his cape, reminds me of the costuming in Black Panther, like M'Baku of the Jabari tribe. It's a detail to say that these movies are in the same universe, so aesthetically, cosmetically, things feel as if they belong in the same big connected world. The visual style, but also the visual language and grammar from movie to movie. But that fur, maybe Thor killed or culled that thing on his travels, now he's wearing it. Yeah, he's capable of that. Or at least he was, because he says,
Now they're but humble tools for peace.
Thor was the god of thunder, then the god of blunder, though now he's redeemed, and retired, similar to Thanos at the end of Avengers Infinity War, and the start of Avengers Endgame, where he hung up his armor, like a scarecrow, while Thor buries his hatchet. Putting the old days to rest, kind of like a grave. Also his hate, tension, frustration, his everything. Which again, considering Thanos, his end, his defeat is visually hinted at near the end of Endgame, with him embedding his double-edged sword in the ground, and resting his helmet on top, like a samurai grave, foreshadowing spelt out. The symbolism in both cases is very Eastern, but more universally, they build a soldier's grave in both cases. But while Thanos is gone, Thor is still right here.
I am still right here.
And so this movie concerns Thor figuring himself out, his path in life after the fight of a lifetime, or the biggest challenge of his life at that point. Also the colour palette used as Thor buries his axe, lots of orangey brown. It makes the shot feel autumnal, the third season of the year, which again brings to mind the idea that Thor has lived a lot, experienced a lot, and feels like he's at a natural end nearly. He's on a journey, a period of soul searching, if you will.
I need to figure out exactly who I am.
The music swells as our Marvel Studios logo comes up. Fantastic, gets the adrenaline pumping, and the rest of the trailer matches that energy. Feels very exciting, fast-paced, action-packed. I'm sold.
I'm sold.
Even so, the setup to the action and soul-searching adventure Thor is about to embark on is preceded by him reflecting, meditating. By the way, these shots here remind me first of the Jon Favreau live-action Jungle Book movie with Scarlett Johansson, then of Star Wars again. The tree and Thor in silhouette on this alien world looks very African, despite the leaves, which give a hybridized alien look to them, if that makes any sense. Even so, it brings to my mind the scene in the Jungle Book of Kaa the snake in the tree, connecting with Mowgli. The various heavenly bodies, the big sun, the planet that looks like Saturn, the moons, great orange-purple contrast with the colour scheme and the light. Looks initially that it could be Earth, but of course the sky and the terrain looks too otherworldly for that, which is cool. The twin suns are very Star Wars-y, a little bit of Luke looking off into the distance in A New Hope as his hero's journey begins, which, looking at the next shot, Thor meditates on a rock. It's framed similarly to Luke at the end of his life in The Last Jedi, as he looks at the setting suns in the distance. Though again, while Luke's heroism ended there, was supposed to end there in Rian Johnson's vision, Thor is at more of a turning point. Less of a confrontation of death, if you will, more between different options. Wind chimes and dream catchers hang down from above. Also he's flanked by flagpoles in this shot, which again, the look is very like that of Eyvind Earle. The design, also they're very medieval, Arthurian, feels like a design choice that's in step with Thor's Norse mythological Viking Anglo-Saxon period, even though this is an alien world. It's very tribal, but not too specific as it mixes at least two different aesthetics. The flags here also remind me of The Force Awakens, of the banners outside of Maz Kanata's castle, again with the medieval style. It looks like either someone else is with Thor, or he's wearing another weird animal carcass as long hair reaches way down, and I'm guessing it's not all his own, and that he's holding up a sword or something. Marvel movie trailers are full of misdirects, of background changes and deletions from the footage, though these appear in the final cut, however. The Avengers Endgame trailer is a good example of this, so we'll see what happens in the final film with this segment. Next is one of my favourite shots, of Bro Thor working out with big chains, burning that fat. This shot will look great in 3D. I don't really watch movies in 3D, at least not theatrically. My TV has 3D capabilities, so I may well watch it at home that way. I like home 3D. So anyway, Thor wears a baseball hat. I imagine it was gifted to him and he didn't love it as much as he should, and comically doctored it with a Sharpie to say Strongest Avenger, which calls back a joke from Thor Ragnarok and Avengers Endgame.
Strongest Avenger.
Access denied.
Strongest Avenger.
Access denied.
Banner.
Welcome, Strongest Avenger.
What?
I'm the strongest Avenger.
It says something about his ego, and him taking care of himself after his downward spiral of binge eating and drinking the past 5 years. Also it evokes Vincent D'Onofrio as Mr. Dawson in Adventures in Babysitting. His costume, whom Sarah, the Marvel Comics Thor fanatic, mistakes for the man himself. His look, chiefly the beard and the hat, is similar to Forrest Gump. Forrest ran across the USA. Thor is working out here in this somewhat creepy cave, with a giant skeleton fastened in chains. This is very Mexican Day of the Dead style. Also the cave and the size of this skeleton, also its interestingly shaped skull, gives the clear impression that we're not in Kansas anymore. Despite the fact that this location is on another world, the style choices I mentioned reminds me of Coco, the Disney Pixar film, as it is very South American. Also the heightened design of this CGI skeleton. If it were animated in Coco, it would definitely fit so well with that design style. Disney homogenization. This shot is a good time to talk about the plot of the movie. I've touched on the premise, but let's go further. Thor Odinson looks to put the past behind him, hang up the superhero thing and live a quieter existence. We got that, but various things draw him back to his Avenger duties. I'll expand on that as we go through other trailers for the movie. But the basis for this movie, it reminds me of Taika Waititi's film What We Do in the Shadows, which Taika said eloquently,
It's about wasting time. and about how humans just waste time and they don't live their lives to the fullest.
Whilst Thor Love and Thunder is a romantic comedy mixed with high drama, the beginning feels like a movie about a war veteran in retirement. Despite still possessing that drive, Thor wants to leave all that behind, even though it would mean not fulfilling his full potential of what he could do.
Wasting time.
Even though Thor isn't an immortal like the vampires in What We Do in the Shadows.
We are not gods. We're born, we live, we die, just as humans do.
It's relatable in the same way as that movie, like this one, but also Avengers Endgame. Sees the characters hanging around doing nothing much, when there's so many opportunities to take.
You'd still just waste that time and not do anything.
In both What We Do in the Shadows and Thor Love and Thunder, having laid-back characters to the point of laziness, or at least too chilled for their own good, is a good comedy concept, and risky in a way, as everything has to be plot-driven or you don't really have a story. But that's only Act 1 of this movie, from the way I interpret these trailers, that is. And the main meat of the story is Thor in more familiar territory. The muscular, yet still lovably meat-headed god of thunder.
I want to choose my own path. Live in the moment.
Him fending off godly and or cosmic intergalactic opponents, and ideally winning the day, as he very nearly didn't before. Often the process of writing the MCU movies begins with Kevin Feige and company, holding meetings with a big whiteboard and a stack of comics. That's the starting point. It's just a matter of crafting a rich, ambitious story each time. Saying that, I understand that the following comics were influential on Thor Love and Thunder. Thor, God of Thunder, Volumes 1 and 2, Thor, Goddess of Thunder, Guardians of the Galaxy, Then It's Us, War of the Realms, Thor, the Mighty Avenger, and many more! I imagine so anyway. There's decades of material to draw from after all. As the Marvel Cinematic Universe is very different to the Marvel Comics universe, material from these graphic novels may be directly adapted in terms of story, or indeed just drawn upon as loose influence in terms of visual style, lines characters have to say, character moments, etc. That's how a lot of the MCU movies work, and this movie continues that. So, let's keep going. Thor teams up with the Guardians of the Galaxy, even wearing Star-Lord's own shirt and jacket, one of his jackets anyway, with the sleeves ripped off. Much to Star-Lord's dismay. His hair in a top knot is very tribal, looks kind of Eastern, like a ninja. Speaking of which, this planet they're on, I believe it's Centauri 4, Yondu Udonta's homeworld, who is essentially Star-Lord's stepfather. Rest in peace, Yondu. As the native people, the Zatoan tribe, have blue skin like Yondu, but also their red outfits are similar in colour scheme to the way Yondu originally looked in the comics. Thor, in his shawl, reminds me of Taika Waititi as the Reverend in Hunt for the Wilder People. His laid-back, a bit too jokey performance.
I said it was going to be like a relaxing holiday.
All the nummiest treats you can imagine. Fanta, Doritos, LMP, burger rings, Coke Zero.
The Guardians of the Galaxy. I suspect James Gunn, who pioneered the GOTG movies, he probably had a ghostwriter credit on this movie, as what they say is very in tune with what the characters are, but what they're actually saying feels like Taika's vision. Nice collab effort.
We're all about to die!
You are horrifying to look at, yes.
I'm Groot.
You said this would be a relaxing holiday! I said it was going to be like a relaxing holiday.
Amazing. Also, going back to Eastern cultural references and costuming, one of the Zatoans looks like royalty, like the Queen from Alice in Wonderland, but also like a geisha, like Queen Amidala from The Phantom Menace. The Zatoan extras look very tribal, and again very Eastern with their headgear, clothes and weapons, kind of untechnological. Contrast to Mantis with her GBG, great big gun. Whoever Thor is standing up to here, or proving a point to, shows bravery, but he's still egotistical and imperfect. Relatable as he throws his jacket away, and the Queen catches it. Nice and irreverent, but it's cool that the Zatoans are in awe of him, they have his respect. This is a good point to bring up intentional continuity errors, or trailer tricks in Marvel movie trailers, as this shot looks to come after Thor threw his jacket off, but his clothes are different. It's possible the background has been changed, just to throw people like me off in breaking these trailers down. We see Kraglin with the Guardians of the Galaxy wearing Yondu's mohawk from Guardians of the Galaxy 2, as he, Nebula, Mantis, Groot, Star-Lord and Rocket all charge off, but Thor remains,
wasting time,
and walks off in the opposite direction, which Star-Lord doesn't seem to mind. Looks like he's waving him off. We see a clip of Sakaar, the trash planet seen from Thor Ragnarok. Epic location. Though the scrap on this junkyard section of the planet, the colours are kind of kitschy as they're bright, but I like the colour palette. It's comedic, which this whole world is. Lots of metallic secondary colours, and the sky looks like oil on water. Maybe it's polluted. The Milano, the Guardian's ship, drops off Thor, and his new best mate, Korg. They're happy, waving them off as they leave through the next jump point off the planet, like a wasp through an opening in a honeycomb. I say a wasp rather than a bee, which is more obvious, as the ship looks more like a wasp in this shot. All this happens as Thor declares,
"My superheroing days are over."
Thor still wears Star-Lord's clothes. They're very 80s, as Star-Lord was a child of that era, also matching the Mighty Thor comic colours again. His t-shirt, the tree motif, represents the 9 realms: Asgard, Jotunheim, Midgard, Nidavellir, Hell, and many more. Although it reminds me of the 6 discs he normally has on his costume, as that motif is on the shirt, but it also looks like Hela's design, Thor's older sister from the last Thor film. Again, rest in peace, even though I'm kind of happy to see her go. I mean, she destroyed Mjolnir, Thor's hammer. Evil. Let's look at Korg. His eyes are redesigned from the last 2 movies, certainly from Ragnarok. They were darker there. Here, they're more a plain white, with little black dot pupils. We see a close-up of Korg with his new eye design in a later teaser. Oh no! They make him look more intimidating, but he's still goofy and silly. Enjoyably so. It's part of his character. Despite such quotes as these from Taika Waititi.
Usually my characters are never just comedy characters, you know, the main ones at least.
Yeah, Korg looks like a court jester with his new outfit. He has a big belt with a gold ram's head, which is cool, and that colour is also on his trousers. Looks very medieval again with the pattern, and by that token comical and like a clown, or at least a fool. Korg's design and clothes kind of remind me of He-Man, which I think is intentional. There's a lot of 70s, 80s choices made in Thor Ragnarok, and that carries over into this movie too, for sure. But the main thing it reminds me of is Archer from the Joe Dante film Small Soldiers, which is an awesome movie. It's the leather straps especially, also the fastenings for their leather that they both have. Archer has an emblem necklace, also a belt with a buckle for his loincloth, and while Korg doesn't have that in his new design, he had a similar feature in the last movie. It's very Conan the Barbarian, sword and sorcery kind of a thing. Korg is similar to Archer again, but different. His boots, though they're fur, and his gauntlets, though they're embellished leather, recall Archer's design, but it looks more modernized with some of the clips. Korg holds a coiled up rope in his hand, and at a glance, that detail vaguely reminded me of Tony Todd when he played Candyman. Candyman had a hook for a hand, and Korg holding his rope kind of looked like that. Also like Captain Hook, but the live action version, one of many, played by Jason Isaacs when he had a double hook on his hand. But Korg is no Candyman. Although the fur on his shoulders makes him look like a pimp, which again makes me think of Candyman. Is Korg a pimp? No. Maybe just another animal that got bagged on their travels. Now Korg wears it on his back, unless it's the same animal skin and they share it during this movie. The key thing about this shot though is that the background may have been changed.
Anything's possible.
But also the blocking. Thor is center frame, Korg is right of frame. It's just blocked as if to include 3 people in this hero shot, so I wonder who's been omitted from this shot. We'll find out in the final cut. This July, yeah, get us excited. We see a flying Viking longboat take off from New Asgard. This is Thor's chariot from Norse mythology, pulled by 2 giant goats, Tangrisnir and Tangriosnir. Yes, I attempted to pronounce their names, which means teeth bearer and teeth grinder.
Look at those! They are wonderful!
Yes, they are. They also scream quite a lot.
I think Kevin Feige okayed this viral screaming goat clip to go in a Marvel movie. Yeah, I'm always up for experimentation in these blockbusters. It looks like there's a bar on board as we have a neon cocktail sign, referencing the Tom Cruise movie of the same name. So yeah, maybe Korg will be the brandy man after all, or Thor.
Tequila!
Or that too. In a later trailer we see that the longboat is sailing on the Bifrost, like the bridge in Asgard rather than a rainbow vortex like we've seen in the other movies. We see a shot of, I think, Mount Olympus, so it looks more like a background from a Studio Ghibli film. The colour palette is very Howl's Moving Castle, even a little bit of Theed, the capital city of Naboo from The Phantom Menace, the palace, or even the whole city too. Very lush and regal, complete with with similar looking waterfalls. Looks like someone or something is flying into this location. Could be Captain Marvel, or at least someone like her, as the flight of this person, or thing, looks very like Captain Marvel. We'll see in the final cut. Another shot of Mount Olympus that we see again looks very decadent, like Theed, but framed kind of like a Wes Anderson film. It's very complicated, lots of finery. It uses that Greek temple motif a lot, with all the pillars and pathways. And we see a giant gold Greek statue. Could this be Hercules? Unsure, potentially. Could be Zeus' son, or another hero of Greek mythology. Someone worthy of merit. The statue reminds me of the Prometheus statue in front of the Rockefeller Center in New York City. Compositionally they're very different, but they're both themed around the same myths. Maybe this is Prometheus in his younger days before he gave fire to the mortal people. Now I'm just making foundationless theories. Something I do know though, not from this trailer as it's kept intentionally vague, but the figures on the pathway are Thor, Jane Foster, Valkyrie and Korg on their travels in Greek heaven. But we'll talk about them in this location soon. Oh boy will we. We see Thor on the deck of his longboat. Reminds me of Captain Jack Sparrow, or just Pirates of the Caribbean in general. A little bit of Peter Pan, but also Treasure Planet with the big guns. And Thor himself with his blonde hair and costume looks very like Errol Flynn, who is just before my time as he is a percentage of you folks, I'm sure. Particularly as a lady in white with blue hair swings in and they embrace and kiss. More instances of text, almost like a tagline. Not every god, small g, has a plan. So we're definitely not talking about this god then. Big G. Yeah, Thor's a real flawed guy. He makes mistakes and so he's relatable. Though while he seems to be at the end of his rope, adventure awaits. Thor journeys by spaceboat to a new world. Could be Mount Olympus, as it's cloudy like in the previous shot, but could also be the planet where the dead body of Thalagar the Behemoth is laid, which that shot is directly translated from the comic book page. Near perfectly, even though Korg joins Thor in the shot on his mission. It's tricky to say what happens where with Thor, as there are a lot of continuity errors with his armour in all of these trailers, so
anything's possible.
Thor's axe glows with a similar flow of energy to Captain Marvel's powers. The visual style is very similar. Also the snap of Thanos' fingers as he used the Infinity Stones in Avengers Infinity War. His armour is different again, same colours virtually, but much more metallic. Like now he's Mecha Thor. Tell you what, maybe he is. We'll have to wait till the final cut. Cut to an interior in Zeus's domain, which looks a little like a senate, not like in the Star Wars prequels, but also like a Greek temple with the pillars, which is an apt design choice as they're Greek gods. Lots of gold being used, and red curtains, both of which make it look like a theatre. A major use of the circle motif, lots of design choices that are fitting and making it look like a building on Mount Olympus, according to Greek mythology. Makes it look epic.
Pretty majestical, eh?
There's an explosion of lightning bolts that set off. The projectiles as they fly reminds me of Din Djarin's mini-rockets from his gauntlet in The Mandalorian. They have a similar sense of trajectory and physics. Both are cool, though this is bigger and grander of course. We see some kind of facsimile of what Mount Olympus often looks like, a city resting atop a cloud, as since my knowledge of Greek mythology doesn't go much further than the Disney Hercules, so to me, like many, that's what it's meant to look like. So it's cool that this movie plays with your expectations. We see in the full trailer that Mount Olympus, the design of it is like a subversion of what it's meant to look like from Greek mythology. It looks very technological, a little bit of steampunk fantasy, as it holds the sun, or a sun right above it, and the clouds break for it. The glowing lightning bolts are cool. Zeus, played by Russell Crowe, we see him from behind here, catches one of the bolts and wields it. The backdrop here looks like Lady Liberty's crown, very royal and important, so ooh yeah, he the man, how heroic, until you see his physique. Yeah, Zeus kind of let himself go.
Thank you, my boy.
Though maybe not as badly as Thor did before.
Oh my god!
Yeah, Zeus got a big belly, but his hair and body armour is cool. He has his colourful, cheering crowd that he's ruling over, plus his adoring maidens right next to him, so... Thor looks to be in Zeus's domain here, and wearing his mecha-like armour, and he and Korg double high-five. Nice to see them as the best of mates, particularly after Thor losing Heimdall in Infinity War. We see New Asgard has been built up. Got that flying longboat again with the same sign from Avengers Endgame, and they're providing tours like it's a tourist attraction now. I see a logo on their tour van with Thor's hammer as part of the design. I can see this from a behind-the-scenes viewpoint, that is to say the business side, as you put something like this in your movie to have a theme park attraction at Disneyland.
Would you believe it?
I know that sounds cynical, but at least in terms of story it's a funny idea. Feels like an irreverent Taika Waititi idea, so thumbs up. One of the fairies has a blue and yellow Viking logo on it. I believe this is Volstagg from the Warriors 3, Thor's brothers and sister in arms from the previous movies, although it kind of looks like the branding from the North Links ferry that travels to Orkney and Shetland from mainland Scotland.
Which is where I'm from.
Interestingly, from a behind-the-scenes standpoint, New Asgard in Avengers Endgame was filmed in Scotland, just outside Edinburgh a little bit. Infinity War shot some Wanda and Vision scenes in the heart of Edinburgh. So woo, representation. This movie was shot over a 6-month period in Sydney, Australia. But that ferry that vaguely looks like a North Links ferry could be a meta joke on where New Asgard was previously filmed, but what matters most is the Viking motif. It's relevant iconography to the location. Valkyrie, now the new ruler of New Asgard instead of Thor, holds a board meeting. That's B-O-R-E-D meeting. I mean, look at her face. Such investment. With members of the UN, I think. Lots of representatives from different nations going by the flags. This room looks very mundane, adding to the dullness. It's similar to the room where Ricky Baker, where his foster mother's funeral was held. I like the center framing in these shots. Again, it's very Wes Anderson, and dryly comedic. We see both Meek and Valkyrie in tuxedos, or at least a suit in Meek's case, as I think he's a butler in this situation. He went from warrior to lazy slob to butler and scribe. Is this a promotion? Feels like a demotion. Anyway, Valkyrie's suit makes her look more masculine. I'm not saying if a woman wears a suit it's more manly looking. It's just there's no intention to make her look feminine. It's the way it fits her. Maybe she's obligated to wear it. She looks stern, though not like she's the boss. She just looks like she doesn't want to be there, and her clothes are uncomfy. Guess being a monarch kinda sucks. Going deeper into this shot, Valkyrie sits between two doors, the male and female bathrooms I believe, though the text isn't in English. I imagine it's intentional symbolism, as this movie is meant to develop her character identity as a bisexual person, showing her in between the two genders, and they're supposed to pair her and Jane Foster as female Thor, played again by Natalie Portman, as the new rulers of New Asgard. We see Jane at the end of the teaser and then much more in the other trailers, but we'll get to that. They might even make Valkyrie non-binary as well, because of this symbolism. Also, the blue banner behind her is a stereotypically masculine colour. Thor deemed she would be the king of New Asgard rather than the queen, so they give Valkyrie female pronouns in the other movies.
Valkyrie, great to see you, angry girl.
So we'll see what happens in the final cut. The thing about Valkyrie and Jane getting together, I'm curious how that's going to play out, particularly as, not to stereotype, but I can see Valkyrie as bisexual, just the way she expresses herself.
You're getting revenge, and you're...
You know, she's kind of a tomboy.
Asgard is in danger. If people are dying, we need to get back there. I need your help.
Finished. Bye.
And doesn't do the whole girly girl Asgardian princess goddess thing. Or at least not too comfortably.
Anyone see an ugly brown van out there?
Yes! But you're not gonna like where it's parked!
Jane, however, I thought she was straight.
God.
But again, that's only as she dated Thor, and then they broke up. But
you don't necessarily switch your sexual orientation.
So, I'm curious about how that'll be explored and explained. This is a movie about figuring oneself out, and the sexuality element is a feature of it for sure. Saying that, it's tricky for me to figure out a pairing like this in my mind, as I'm a dude, and
I'm straight.
So yeah, can't comment, at least not clumsily, on orientation and discovering identity in that way. What matters most for the movie, though, is the natural progression of the character storyline and how strong it is as a sequel, which we shall see in the final cut. The thing about the recent Marvel movies is the push for more representation, which the MCU has always done. Different genders, different races for your superheroes all working together as a team, in fact every character on screen. Though now their plan, concurrent with their established formula, is to have more LGBTQIA+ characters, which they've touched on in their recent movies like Eternals and Doctor Strange 2. Also their streaming shows as well, though this movie does it with two major established characters. characters. Call it the politics of Hollywood coming into it, even though the Marvel comics have diversified their character types for some time. So it's nothing new for them. It's just a question of what's going in the movies now, as this is something Disney are trying to push in their media. Foreign markets be damned. Tell you what though, even if Taika Waititi wasn't directing a major release like this, he's one for being wild and free with his movies.
I like to find things that seem dangerous to me in a way. I'm not like crazy enough to look for things that will end my career, but like things that feel like I will be nervous most of the time I'm making it because I'm unsure if it's a good idea for me to do it or not.
This sentiment, I think, effectively sums up the direction taken with the new Thor sequel.
I find that taking the risks, you reap bigger rewards from that. And if I feel like I'm playing it safe or I'm too complacent and a bit too comfortable doing something, then I feel like my work suffers. You basically just make mediocre work.
As long as it matters for the story being told, variously figuring oneself out, and feels sincere, as this is a blockbuster. I love Marvel, but it is also a product, a money spinner. You do all that, then it's a good movie. Star-Lord gives Thor a pearl of wisdom, because he's wise enough to start doing that, I suppose.
There's a little pea coming out of me right now. Remember what I told you. You ever feel lost? Just look into the eyes of the people that you love.
Star-Lord follows his own advice and looks at his family, the Guardians of the Galaxy, Drax, Nebula, Mantis, Rocket and Groot, though Thor edges into picture. Look at those blue eyes, it's very Viking. As Star-Lord attempts to maintain eye contact with the Guardians, though Thor persists, he did say look into the eyes of the people that you love.
Not me, just listening.
Right, okay. I didn't know Thor was pansexual. Okay. Whatever. We'll see what the final cut brings us. Seriously though, Thor's lost a lot of friends and family along the way. Doesn't hurt to feel a connection with people you like and care about and they care about you.
Not me.
You get the idea. They part ways with a handshake. Here's a pearl of wisdom from Taika Waititi.
I don't tend to encourage improvising a lot when I make films because a lot of people are pretty bad at it and a lot of actors like to think they're good at improvising but they're not.
Which explains moments like these.
Are you thinking what I think you're thinking?
I'm thinking it.
What are we thinking?
Thinking what? I'm thinking it too.
Omnipotency.
Plus.
Human handshake. It's the Asgardian shake. Into the snake.
Really dragging this out.
And finish the classic Asgardian high one.
Oh well, at least it's enjoyably silly and the banter is appropriate to the characters. Title card time. The chorus to Sweet Child of Mine swells as the text takes form. These patterns remind me of the Hex in WandaVision, just the televisual style we see for a second. Now, I like this text a lot. It's just the earlier version of this I rated a bit more, as it looked more like the He-Man title card. It looked cheesier and much more fun and silly, very 80s and sword and sorcery. I think the fonts are all the same, but it's a different color scheme. The O in Thor is cool. It looks like a Viking rune, fits with the Norse mythology of Thor. Speaking of Thor, we see Mjolnir reforged, as of course Thor's hammer was destroyed in the last movie. Unsure how it was remade, but it's a welcome sight. The movie will surely tell us how it came to be again, and Mjolnir flies into frame and is caught by Jane Foster as female Thor, to Thor's surprise. That comic-accurate Thor mask that Jane wears is kind of kinky. This is some 50 Shades of Grey type stuff right here. At least loosely to me. I know that's not intentional, and
I know that sounds bad.
But tell you what, Jane was sexualized as Thor in the older comics, to a lesser extent in the newer comics, so they do that here too, but only as far as they can, and it's respectful. She's buff and dressed like Thor with the cape and armour with the 6 discs, got his old hammer, the same colour scheme as Thor. Go Jane. I have a feeling these backgrounds were changed and scenes Frankenstein together for the trailer, as Thor is dressed in the same clothes as he was when he found Falagar, and plus we see in the next trailer that Thor has different armour, his mecha armour, and a mask too. So this is rejigged just to confuse people, so... The location they're in looks like New Asgard under attack. Not sure what the context is. It reminds me of Lake Town in the Hobbit movies. But also Beauty and the Beast, the village in the animated Disney film, which has since been translated into live action before, so it looks fairly natural in Thor 4. The archaic style of the piece, even though, yeah, that Emma Watson Beauty and the Beast movie is bad. Anyway though, what matters most is, yay, the movie is out soon, so go see it.
I guarantee it's going to be good.
So that was the teaser trailer for Thor Love and Thunder. Let's check out the full trailer, plus more. The opening shot is the same establishing shot as Thor meditating under the tree in the previous teaser, although we see two figures, silhouettes of who I believe is Star-Lord and Mantis. Spoilers. We see Korg in a cave with members of the Zatoan tribe. The cliff with the autumnal tree that Thor is under is in the distance. Korg, looking like an Eskimo with his animal skins, even like a Hun from Mulan. I wonder if he's too hot on this planet? Maybe not. It does look like autumn. Anyway, he spins a yarn to the Zatoan tribe's children.
Kids, get your popcorn now.
In the most irreverent way possible, which makes it comedy gold. It's satirical of the stories around the campfire idea. As there's a fire on in the cave, it's very snuggly.
Let me tell you the story of the space Viking, Thor Odinson.
That's a great gag, calling him a space Viking. It might be the first time I've heard Thor called a Viking in the MCU. As far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, please. As he's part of Norse Viking mythology, though in these movies he's real. It's up there with Taika calling him a rich kid from space that had his house burgled from him, which of course led to things like this.
Is he asleep?
Kids, get your popcorn now.
It's just like going to the movies. Oh wait, this tale gets us back up to speed. I love the 80s synth score here. It's not quite John Carpenter or even Stranger Things. It's too bright and happy for that, but I love it. Compositionally, it feels like it's based on Sweet Child O' Mine, which it is. It's a great remix, with some darker interjections, but we'll get there.
He was no ordinary man. He was a god.
Yeah, and the kids are in awe of him. Thor unleashes his lightning with his axe, we get blue eyes. This shot was no doubt the basis for the poster, sometimes with Jane wielding one of Thor's weapons. Very cool.
After saving planet Earth for the 500th time.
500th time? How many adventures has he had that we've not gotten to see? Nah, it's just Taika Waititi's comedy writing. Besides, it feels like that many from the amount of Marvel movies in general there have been in the past 20 plus years. Also the number of comics too. So that's a next level joke. I think Thor sees himself as Michael Jackson with his vest, with the Guardians as the audience for his fashion parade.
As I turn up the collarbone, my favorite winter coat.
Make that Star-Lord's coat that he's cut the sleeves off of. Makes him look like Kurt Russell from Big Trouble in Little China, which is befitting as this is a comedy with crazy action in it like that film. Also, Kurt Russell played Star-Lord's dad, Ego.
I'm your dad, Peter.
In the last Guardians film, who again met a bad, sad end. No! But yeah, the vest is very 80s, kind of like Thriller with the red colour, and looks like Thor's embellished it a little more than it already was too. We've got a new shot of New Asgard, which looks like Scotland, but anyway. Thor gets an outfit change from Kurt Russell to his winter-worthy threads. This shot looks like the background has been changed. It looks like Sakaar as it's a dump, but they've got their longboat, which they didn't have on this world before, or so the teaser led us to think. We'll see what's in the final cut. Also again, it looks like a third person could be with them, though it's less obvious this time than in the last teaser. His clothing change is similar to the same beat in Thor Ragnarok of him and Loki changing clothes. Looks like the Bifrost, but it's just lightning.
Thor set off on a new journey. He got in shape.
I love that we're seeing his training montage in the trailer. It's very 80s, got his headband, though to my dismay this music isn't included. But yeah, Thor got back into shape after his depressive episodes in the past.
He went from dad bod to god bod.
Yeah!
Mjolnir.
He reclaimed his title as the one and only Thor. Oh, spoke too soon.
We saw that coming though.
Jane?
So this whole fight sequence, lots of continuity errors shot to shot, but I think it's meant to be New Asgard under attack at night. Unsure who's attacking them though. But yeah, both girl Thor and boy Thor, their outfits change. Thor wears a mask that's very Brazilian, like a carnival mask, lots of gold, looks like an eagle. I love it, it's part of his mecha style suit. And Jane is masked, then maskless, which is a funny juxtaposition. But at last, they're reunited. Thor's in shock, looks like he got competition. Jane seems unfazed in all of these trailers, at least at seeing her old ex-boyfriend. Both these tones are great combined, shocked and not fussed, playing it straight, and it's capped off wonderfully with the burning facade in the background burning up and collapsing. Nice flat comedy Wes Anderson shot, also like a stage play. I like how long it holds on it, makes it funnier. Great shots of Pegasus against orange light, juxtaposed with Jane wielding Thor's powers. Great contrasts with the blue against the orange. These shots are sandwiched between Thor expositing to Korg.
The old ex-girlfriend.
Sets up the drama of meeting up with your ex-partner after so long. Though I wonder if Korg gets it. Has he ever had a girlfriend? Maybe, maybe not. The previous film hinted at his daddy issues.
I tried to start a revolution but didn't print enough pamphlets, so hardly anyone turned up, except for my mum and her boyfriend, who I hate.
Though maybe he figured it out in the past 5 years, and he can move on with his life.
Thank you very much, I will.
So Pegasus flies in to help, could be transporting Valkyrie to the fight, and Jane using her powers echoes Thor doing the same thing on the bridge in Asgard.
What's it been like, 3, 4 years?
8 years, 7 months and 6 days, give or take.
First of all, great writing. I like the 8-7-6 countdown Thor has. Jane seems different now than in the past. She seems more blasé, carefree. It's like she's playing drunk. She's like Taika playing the boy's dad in Boy.
Do you think I could borrow some money? I'm just a bit broke at the moment. Oh, it's not fair, man. These kids get more than we ever got.
Part of this means that Jane was probably dusted away 5 years ago, and so she thinks it hasn't been as long as it really has since they broke up. Besides, whilst that is the case, it's a funny interaction. Thor cared more about their relationship than Jane did. I don't mean that in a mean way. This is just irreverent banter between them.
Jodie Foster.
Jane Foster.
This is a layered joke as it's typical Taika Waititi wordplay, as their names sound similar, but also actress Jodie Foster is a lesbian in real life, so the press likes to make a big deal of. So there's an irony there, which could be intentional or unintentional, as Jane's, certainly Valkyrie's bisexuality is to be explored in this movie. Looking at the Marvel comics, Jane Foster became female Thor after being diagnosed with cancer. Chemotherapy mustn't have been enough, but the power of Thor's hammer cured her, also of course making her a superhero. That could well be in this movie as backstory for Jane, as it would be very interesting, and with real drama, explaining how her breakup, to her, was the least of her problems. Also the snap, as terminal illness is as heavy a thing to come to terms with, and thankfully recover from, as it is heavy subject matter for your movie. This is why they may not tackle that aspect of it at all, as it's way out of sync with the goofy, actiony, romantic dramedy this film sells itself as, although it wouldn't be out of character for Taika to have a likeable protagonist die in his movie, like Rosie Betzler in Jojo Rabbit, or Ricky's stepmother in Hunt for the Wilder People.
So look at a lot of my films, a lot of the time it's not full of jokes. You know, there's like 10-15 minutes of the film where nothing funny happens, and it's just really sad. Usually the ends of my films are really sad.
Hold that thought.
So Jane may or may not be a recovered cancer patient, I don't know. Taika can do comedy and drama mixed together so well, but we have seen a dying cancer patient in a Marvel movie already. It was the inciting incident for Peter Quill, who became Star-Lord in the Guardians of the Galaxy. You don't want to be too tropey or, more importantly, too heavy-handed with your drama, so it may well be in there, but if it's not, I'm not shocked. See what happens at the movies. With Thor and Jane, you'd think he cares more about what he and Jane had, although when asked,
Am I, sensing feelings?
he reacts like this.
Well, you're right.
So yeah, he most certainly does, despite shots like these. Even though Jane and Valkyrie are going to be a thing in this movie, so... The shot of Jane and Thor on the boat, can't tell if it's the bow or the stern. We see the Bifrost flow past them. I like how they're avoiding each other's eyes, like I said. They cheat to the camera a lot, but looking way out of each other's eye lines makes it funnier. Thor and Valkyrie's conversation, the background switched between Mount Olympus and Sakaar. Unless they made different shots from different story locations flow together in editing the trailer, despite Thor wearing different clothes. Yeah, it's a real Frankenstein job. See what happens in the final cut. Next we come to the darkest element of this movie. We're introduced to Gorr, the God Butcher, played to perfection by Christian Bale. We see his domain.
The Shadow Realm.
Yes.
The Shadow Realm.
And him reaching for his sword, the Necro Sword, which means death sword or dead sword.
Dead?
Yeah, which is freaky. On a beach with the sun setting. The music turns very sinister as he makes his vow of vengeance on all the gods in the universe.
The only ones who gods care about is themselves.
Grammatically incorrect.
So this is my vow.
Ooh.
All gods will die.
Whoa, looks like Batman did live long enough to see himself become the villain. Gorr looks like Brian Warner, better known as Marilyn Manson. Some people weren't happy, to say the least, that Gorr doesn't look comic book accurate in this movie, which is kind of true looking at the design of his head, but especially his body proportions. But I think it comes from portraying the character in live action with an actor in grey-white makeup and a simplified shawl costume. It kind of looks like what it is, but at least it's practical and real. There's a lot of CGI in all of these movies, so it's nice to have that. But it also helps him stand out from every other character as this movie's big bad.
How exciting!
Well, you get the idea anyway.
There's nothing to say that Gorr won't transform, even mutate, into his look known from the comic books in this film. The Necrosword has properties similar to the Venom symbiote from the Spider-Man spin-off movies, which is now in the MCU after what's happened in Spider-Man No Way Home, but this is a Marvel Studios Disney-only production, rather than a Sony-Disney co-production, so we'll see what happens. I think as long as Gorr as a character is portrayed well and has layers to him, which Taika Waititi promises he will, then we're fine.
I know that my films are about very important things, and they've got deeper themes in them.
As a bit of backstory from the comics, Gorr was raised to praise the gods that provided for his culture. Though he had doubts in his faith, his parents ended up dying of disease. In fact, his wife and children all died too in similarly tragic circumstances, and he blamed the gods for it. He sought his revenge, going on a murder spree, legitimizing his title as the God Butcher, but not before the sword gave him his power, and corrupted an already insecure, flawed and desperate being. That'll surely be in this movie, to contextualize his trajectory in the story, and to give him the depth of character Taika promises. Solidify that fall from grace, if you will. I'm going to go off on a tangent for a minute, typical of me. I'm feeling inspired. I want to make a style of metal music that fits Gorr's personality, which I'm calling Gorrcore. It's like basically metalcore, but in sync with Gorr's sensibilities.
All gods will die. How exciting!
So if there's any metalheads out there that watch my content, feel free to get in touch. Let's collab, mash some stuff up. But anyway, it's a matter of being faithful when you have a great character from the comics, but also taking some liberties if necessary, crafting a movie with your own vision.
I found my voice was a mixture of those two, trying to find a balance between that comedy and that drama.
So let's buckle up for that. Duty calls Thor. There are problems across the realms, from New Asgard on Earth to Mount Olympus where Zeus and company reside, as everyone is at the mercy of Gorr.
There's a maniac who seeks to end us all.
We're gonna die.
We must do something!
That's the big dramatic plot of this movie, fending off this being that swears to kill all the gods he comes across, as in his eyes the universe would be a better place without them. Or so says he. We even see celestials like from Guardians of the Galaxy and Eternals on Mount Olympus, as Thor's boat makes its escape from Zeus's court. Looks like every god everywhere is in danger of death, so Thor will need to get back into action. Assemble a team, not this one, and they'll rally together to stop Gorr. Yeah! Jane and Valkyrie ready themselves for the journey. I like that painting behind Valkyrie. It's very Julianne Simpson. I'll link her artist's Instagram in the description. I have some of her work here.
Are you packed?
Sex innuendo.
Times like this, we need to come together.
Sex innuendo. Color contrast, or rather a rainbow palette if you will, against a virtually tonal range of color looks to play an important role in this movie. Though the shot of Gorr on Mount Olympus goes against that grain, I suspect this is another Frankenstein shot, but it looks visually more interesting to see him in different environments. But oh Gorr, you look depressed against all those happy colors.
When you leave, my colors fade to gray.
Other than the eyes, which are orange, Gorr has chalky grey skin and dark grey scars, which become more severe in other footage.
Speaking of which, you know how I got these scars?
He fights the good guys, so... The design makes him look like Nosferatu, even though Marvel Comics has done Dracula comics, so they could have pushed that design further, if they decide not to mutate him into another form in the movie. But anyway, the makeup and Bale's performance reminds me of the vampire in Salem's Lot. But also Peter, from What We Do in the Shadows. Very inspired, Taika. It sets up a visual language that's kind of Star Wars-y. Colour for the protagonists, monochrome for our antagonists. And the way they brawl, as we see, has an artsy look. Much like how Two Cars, One Night was all in black and white. And Taika did a bit of that in the last movie. Even Thor The Dark World has a bit of that muted colour, slow motion, Zack Snyder Nightmare World look. Except it's not taken too far. I know Snyder's redeemed himself now with his cut of Justice League, but typically his movies are too dark and glowering and humourless. The Thor movies have a bit of that 300 look.
This is Sparta!
But the comic book fidelity is there, dramatic enough but funny enough to enjoy it.
Mixture.
With Thor and company fighting Gorr, there are bursts of colour in the darkness, like blue, orange when Valkyrie fights with a lightning bolt implement, and a bit of purple too. Good palette. Life in an otherwise dead world. Speaking of Star Wars, Gorr, using his sword on the moon, the location reminds me of Exegol, the Emperor's planet in The Rise of Skywalker, as they're both dominated by evil and depleted of all life therefore, even down to the lightning bolts, although the effect of Gorr unleashing lightning from his sword mirrors Thor doing the same thing with Stormbreaker in Avengers Infinity War. Thor and company take off on their adventure from Earth to Mount Olympus. Nice Bifrost rainbow trail there, and a great shot of their boat bursting through Zeus's stained glass window, by the way, though it looks like they travelled through the dark dimension from the Doctor Strange movies, unless, whoop, background change, just to confuse. It looks pretty though, kind of like the Northern Lights. Thor epically fights off the Greek soldiers. He looks like Whiplash from Iron Man 2 with his laser whips, and the whips themselves look like what Doctor Strange uses. It's kept distinct, but it also feels like it's all in the same universe with a common visual style. Thor praises Jane for beating up their opponents. Great choreography. Go Jane. I love that Mjolnir breaks off into shards and fires, then reforges in the user's hand. Makes use of the hammer being broken, then fixed, then broken, then fixed again. Also that the soldiers are quite accurate to the look of ancient Greek warriors with their armour.
This is Sparta!
Yeah.
It's just my first bad guy.
Never forget your first.
Sex joke. That looks kinda hot. In Gods We Trust. Nice little spoof of the pledge from the American dollar bill.
You are not like the other gods of kill, because I have something worth fighting for.
Thor says as he makes his little pinky promise to his ex-girlfriend. Yeah. Gorr challenges Thor to a fight to the death.
I choose you!
Thor gives a bring it on, come at me bro gesture, kind of like Bruce Lee or Jackie Chan in a martial arts movie, as they engage themselves to fight. Nebula and Drax gun down enemies. Karen Gillan as Nebula lets out a similar battle cry to Korg in the previous movie. Also Drax does the same. Great direction. Brings to mind Taika's Maori Aotearoa warrior side. Here it looks like Jane is casting her lightning in the same pose as Captain America in Avengers Endgame, in a cave like Erebor in the Hobbit movies. Looks like it's in the bowels of Mount Olympus. Looks like it's got golden god heads as part of the pillars. We get our title card, but let's talk about the most memed bit of this trailer, possibly of all the Thor Love and Thunder marketing material in general.
Let's see who you are and take off your disguise. And flick!
Oh, you flipped too hard, damn it!
Look, Thor's got a tattoo of Loki with his helmet on his back now. Wonder when he got that. Yeah, here's our beefcake shot of Thor, as this trailer isn't rated PG-13, or rated 12, or 12A if you're from the UK like me. Thor's buttocks is pixelated out, so I imagine it'll be uncensored in the final film. If that's your thing, ladies, go ahead and enjoy. There's been a push over the years for more male nudity in Hollywood. You know, level the playing field. I think I read Kevin Bacon make a statement about this long ago. If I'm mistaken, please let me know. But I was thinking, Kevin Bacon, or just Hollywood dudes in general, is that something you personally want to see more of, or something you want to participate in, or both? One way or another though, I think I can do without seeing Chris Hemsworth's on the big screen. I'll watch this moment just like this. It is funny seeing all these Helen of Troy looking chicks. Plus some dudes comically faint at the sight of Thor's god body. Zeus is put to shame, while Valkyrie, strong-willed as she is, just sits and checks out Thor, which I'm fine with. As a side note, Zeus says flick, like Ant-Man does in Endgame.
Flick me.
As you can use the F-word once in a 12-rated movie, though MCU Marvel is yet to do that.
Shut the front door.
Oh, motherfucking!
If you spell the word flick slightly differently, that's the word you end up with. So from now on, just use that instead. We know what you mean.
And oh. Too hard, damn it!
The shots in this location aren't too much like the Senate in The Phantom Menace, except for maybe this shot.
Will you defer your motion to allow a commission to explore the validity of your accusations?
Yawn.
Though Valkyrie and Jane's cloaks look very Phantom Menace, especially Valkyrie with the red, yellow, orange. Thor's is blue, masculine, macho, strongman. Jane's is a bit more neutral with the green. And Korg's, well, it just makes him look more conspicuous than he already is. Jane and Valkyrie sit in matching seats, Jane asking,
Shall we help them? And eventually, grape.
Eating grapes from a woven popcorn, a woven horn thing. It's almost ancient Roman, not Greek. The final shot of the trailer sees Thor on Centauri 4, fending off enemies with heavy artillery. Even though the environment is purple, it reminds me of the TIE fighters against the setting sun in The Force Awakens, Apocalypse Now style, and the blocking of the hovering tank from the right to left is similar to Rey on her speeder in the Jakku Desert in The Force Awakens. But while those shots are both orange in colour scheme, this is all purple tones, but there's a similar visual style. Well, that was the review for the marketing material of Thor Love and Thunder. Without going into too many spoilers, as Disney are pumping out new footage for this movie online by the minute. Thanks for watching, everyone. July 8th to see this movie. I'll be there for the Thursday night preview on July 7th. Got my tickets as they're on sale now, of course. So folks, go turn out to watch Thor Love and Thunder.
I guarantee it's going to be good.
Thanks again for watching, folks, and if you enjoyed this video, remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, ringing that notification bell to get notified on all updates as they come through in the future. Take care, folks, and have fun at the movies.